where, you know, something could go wrong, and it's good to be prepared for that. You've also got, you know, fire, a very common occurrence in the home, both, big, small, medium, you know, fire is something we need to prepare for in the home. Flood. So many parts of our shire, unfortunately, are in flood-prone areas, and it's something that we need to get ready for, you know, during winter and during spring when we're going to get those rains. And finally, you know, another type of common emergency that we have to prepare for in the Cardinia Shire is storm. You know, as we saw, you know, this year, you know, with climate change and weather patterns changing and weather becoming more severe, we need to get ready for this severe weather more and more often. And as we saw this year, you know, these events don't just last for the period of the storm, they can have a lasting impact. So we need to get ready in our home for those emergencies. Now, what we're going to do is just go through tonight some simple actions that you can do to help you prepare. And there's a link there on the page, and we'll send out the slide pack to everyone, and you can click on that link. And there's just some simple steps that you can do around the home and with your family and with the people that you live with to help you prepare. And we're just going to go through those tonight, but I do encourage you to hop on that link and then go through it at your own pace at home as well. So, you know, preparing early is the key in terms of any emergency. If you're preparing the night before, you know, you're preparing during the emergency, often it's too late and you make poor decisions. So what we encourage all people to do, you know, before summer, prepare for bushfire. Before storm season, prepare. You know, have regular conversations with people. And we're just going to go through some of those tonight. So one of the first things is have an emergency plan and practice it regularly. And, you know, you'll know your context and you'll know what emergencies are most likely going to happen for you. So you can make a plan and then practice it with your family and the people that you live with. So everyone understands it and understands what to do when it occurs. And, you know, some people say, I've got a plan, it's in my head. Now, that's really great. That's a good start. But, you know, the actual act of writing it down, talking it through with your family helps build that understanding and helps make sure that plan is as good as we can. And we're going to go through a basic template that council can provide you that can help you with that plan. You know, if you've got animals, you know, animals are definitely part of the family, and often people, when they're thinking about their emergency plan, forget about those animals. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can prepare for your pets and other large animals that you might have. We're going to talk about, you know, making sure you make copies of important documents that you might need. You know, in an emergency, you know, you might forget these things and it becomes really critical. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Insurance is critical, but also having the right kind of insurance is really critical as well. It's not just enough to have insurance. It's about, is it suitable for your need and your context? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to go through how you can pack an emergency kit, what that might look like, what might be in it that you can use in an emergency. These are all great things that you can do to prepare early, and we're going to touch on those in some detail. So the first one we're going to touch on is that writing that emergency plan. Now on council's website, we've got available for residents to download a very simple emergency plan that you can use, and it goes through the key things. You can get larger kinds of plans out there, but sometimes, you know, you start small, but, you know, you suit to your context. Now the key thing that the areas that this plan goes through is firstly your household information. So, you know, where, you know, people that live there, key telephone numbers. Again, in an emergency, you might forget these things. If you lose your phone, you might not know your numbers. And I'm gonna throw myself in it here. If I didn't have my phone, I wouldn't know my wife's telephone number. So these are the kinds of things that, you know, in the modern age where, you know, if we lost that device in an emergency, would I have access to that information? And that's a great thing about writing all that down on your plan about your key contacts for people in your family. Second one is around, you know, key contacts for children or caregivers or workplace information. Again, in an emergency, you might be, you know, unfortunately, you know, incapacitated in some form, and you've got to pass that information on. And it's much easier to point to someone and to point to the emergency plan than trying to articulate that, say, if you're unable to speak. So that's where that information can be really critical for emergency services or other people trying to help you, to have that written down somewhere where you can give it to someone who can help you. And again, same with emergency contacts and out-of-town contacts. Again, just having that information somewhere where it's not on a device, you don't need power, it's there, can be given in an emergency situation is really important. Next part on this template of the plan is about an agreed meeting place. So again, often these days we're so reliant on technology in terms of communication, maps, all these kind of things. Talking with your family and having an agreed meeting place in case something goes wrong is a really smart thing to do. Okay, so that's one thing we would encourage you to do. If you've got family, younger children or family, have that agreed meeting place. Talk about it. So if something goes wrong, you know where to go. You know where your friends and family are going to go. And lastly, again, your important numbers. Things that are important to you in your context. It could be the doctor. It could be other caregivers. Things, or the vet. Numbers that are relevant and important to you that you need in an emergency when you're not going to have time to Google it or look through it, or your phone can't be available. So the first thing, as I said, is write down that emergency plan, those basic things. Now, there are many other templates you can do for specific emergencies, and you can download those from those agency websites. So, for example, you live in a flood-prone area, you might want to write a specific plan around your property for flood. And I would encourage you to go to the Vic SES website. If it's around fire, and we'll touch a little bit on fire safety, they can give you a template that supports, writing your house fire plan. All those things I would encourage you to, if you've got those specific risks, to write down a specific plan for that risk. Now, the next thing, once you've got your plan, okay, probably what the next critical thing that you should do is make an emergency grab and go kit. Now, we hear often in emergencies, you get a warning, you don't have a lot of time, in a major emergency. If it's a house fire scenario, you might have to leave very quickly, or a flood, or a medical emergency where you've got to go to hospital quickly. You don't have time to pack that bag. And if you do pack that bag, you're probably going to forget really critical items. And I heard a story once. It was a great anecdote. It was a bushfire anecdote. And a young woman was told, you got to evacuate, you got 10 minutes, pack your bag and go. And in that bag, she packed 10 pairs of shoes, because at that time, her brain was so busy with everything. Her brain said shoes are important, and she forgot everything else that was important to her, family photos, documents, but she had 10 pairs of shoes. So what the research tells us is, when we're under stress, our brain power, we lose 50% of our brain power, and we start making those really bad choices. So packing that emergency kit with all the things that you know are important when you're not under stress is going to make your life so much easier when that emergency happens. Now, we've got on our website, and again, other websites have it, but this is on the Cardinia website, which you can download, an example of what you should put in your grab kit. And I'll go through what that could look like as well, and what kind of form. But some key things you should include as that emergency plan, important documents, which I'll go through, some basic medical equipment or medical items that are important to you. Okay, so that could even be scripts. Okay, if you need to be able to get medicine, because we do know in emergencies sometimes it's very difficult to be able to get a repeat of a script or something from your doctor during a major emergency, or after something's occurred. Any medical aids or items, it could be spare hearing aids, spare hearing aid battery, items for pets and children. And one thing you got to think of in emergency, if you've got a younger family or young children or grandchildren that you look after, when you get out of and you're safe, we're trying to bring those people or those children back to some sense of normal as soon as possible. And a great way to do that is if you've got, a teddy, colouring book, a storybook, something that can help distract them, and you can do that, you've got it ready to go. And often what some people do is they get their child to actually pack a small emergency go bag that goes with the family one. So they've got the items that are important to them, because an emergency can be really traumatic, and the one way we can reduce that trauma is saving some of those precious items for that person. Mobile phone, if you've got a spare mobile phone, but most people, the key item will be the charger, or a battery pack that you've got in that box, so that you've got the ability to keep it going later on, because there's no guarantee when you get to safety that you're going to have the ability to access a PowerPoint. So having that extra power, being able to contact family, friends, and make the call is really important. So that's a key aspect that should be in your go box or in your emergency grab kit. Miscellaneous, personal items, personal care items. Again, emergencies are stressful enough. The ability to, comb your hair, brush your teeth, just make yourself feel a little bit better can be really critical in the things that we overthink, we don't think about. So packing those items in your go bag, could really help you in that time. Food and water, just some basic items, just some basic couple bottles of water, some, non-perishable items, snacks. Again, in an emergency, you don't know how long it is it's going to be till you can access, some food or some drink. Having those items there means at least you've got something to get you through until you can get those things. Radio and torch, again, key thing we learnt during the storm. We lost, a lot of Shire residents lost power for a significant amount of time. So having a torch with batteries, really important to make sure that in an emergency you've got some access to light. Same with the radio. During emergencies, it's not guaranteed that we're going to have internet connection in areas, especially when the power goes down. So the ability to have a radio that you can listen to emergency information is really important. And it also could be just, for a bit of entertainment as well. So having a small little portable, old school kind of radio can be really critical, in that go kit. And then finally, some personal protective equipment, depending on, what your scenario is. So if it's a bushfire scenario that you're planning for your kit, it could be some P2 masks, some smoke masks. It could be, other items that you can wear to protect yourself. It could be, in a flood situation, it could be gum boots, things that you think, you could forget that could be really critical in that time. On the other side of the slide, you can see there's some other options there for, for children or for pets. And things, it talks about things that you might leave behind. We talk about, personal memories, family photographs, important documents, all of those things. You don't have to store the actual family album in the box, but you can put a USB, with all those items so that they're not lost. That can sometimes be the thing that really gets to people. So just putting all those items on a USB can be really critical. Now, what I'm going to do is just go through some items and different kinds of ways that you can actually store them. So one way you can do it is actually have it in a box itself. So this is an example that we use, and it's labeled. So what we'd recommend is that you label it clearly so other people know what it looks like, the family knows what it looks like, and this one's labeled here, emergency grab kit. And then on the sides, I don't know if you can see, it might be a bit hard on your screen, but on the sides, it's got all the emergency numbers that we might need. So for police, SES, Vic Emergency, for translation, and council as well down there. And then on the other side, we've put local radio stations where I can get that information. Again, in an emergency, you're not going to have time to, or you might not even have the brain power to be getting those things. So having it there all ready to go is really good. Now, in the box, as I said, what we've got, in there, you're trying to pack it, making it as efficient as possible so you can put things in bags, making it all nice and neat there. For copies of documents, you could use a document folder here. So we've got some examples. You might have a copy of your driver's license or your passport, those key things to be able to actually get documents. A key thing that I would recommend you print out, your insurance documentation. So you've got it all there in case of emergency. The last thing you need is you don't know what your policy number is after a house fire or something like that. As we said, bottles of water, some whiskers for the cat. Often one of the things that, as I said, people forget is about their pets. And often the first thing that we get asked as council after emergency is, I need some pet food, I need a pet bowl, I need the lead. Those kind of things that you think about it beforehand so you've got those things ready to go. So you can have a box kind of arrangement there, but sometimes a box can be a little bit hard to handle, a little bit bulky. Another way that you could do it is have a bag. So this is an example that we've made. Again, it's got all the key numbers on it. On this version, we've put a checklist, and what we'll do after tonight's presentation is the community members will send an email, and if you wish to get a bag like this, we will send you one so you can start your evacuation kit. And again, the concept's the same, but again, this one, a bag might be a little bit easier for you to handle. Again, you can get a backpack. There are many ways that you can do it, but what we would recommend is you make that go kit, go bag, and suit it to your context and need. Now, once you've done that, you've written your plan, you've got your emergency grab kit or your go bag, that probably the next critical thing that you should be talking about with your family or looking at it is your insurance. Okay, so in an emergency, fire, storm, flood, whatever kind of emergency you're going to need, insurance is critical. Okay, it's going to help you get back on your feet and recover from that emergency quicker than if you didn't. And the first step around insurance is knowing what your risk is. So thinking about, where am I? What are the kinds of emergencies I'm going to face? If I'm in a flood-prone area, making sure that your coverage covers that. If you're in a bushfire area, making sure it covers that. If you're a farmer, making sure it covers what you're going to need. So look at your policy, make sure it covers what that risk. Second step, calculate the value of those things that you're going to want to repair, rebuy. One of the biggest issues that we have in Australia is people have insurance, but that under insurance, people forget it's not just the value of the property or rebuild. Your insurance also has to cover the rehabilitation of the block, the knockdown, then rebuild. The items in there, making sure what you have and the value of those items. So you're not, when you do access your insurance, you're not being shortchanged. As it says there, insure what matters. So you can get different kinds of insurance for different things, making sure your policy is at the best possible for your scenario. And finally, take the time to organize, and as I talked about, those important documents that you're going to need to be able to claim on your insurance, valuation certificates, all those things that prove that you had those items in the first place. And what I'd recommend is you go to the website listed there, insure.vic.gov.au, and it's actually got some really great tools that can help you work out, is my insurance enough, calculate the value of your belongings, and do all those things. So, insurance critical. If you rent, you own, all your items, make sure you've got insurance and it's the correct insurance for you. Now, just moving, to one of our more common, aspects that occur in the home, and one I would recommend that, everyone does an assessment of their home is around home fire safety. So every year we have, a number of preventable house fires that the CFA and Fire Rescue Victoria attend. And unfortunately, some of those cases where there are preventable house fires, we also have preventable injuries and preventable deaths. So it's really important that your family and yourself and those people that live with you understand some basic principles of fire safety. Now, this handout is available on the CFA website, and there's a number of templates and tools that you can go through. But I'm going to just touch on, some of the really core important things. And the first one is smoke alarms. So every person should have smoke alarms in their house, because we know smoke alarms save lives. That is core. Many times firefighters come to homes and the person was delayed getting out because they didn't have a smoke alarm, or they had a smoke alarm and it wasn't working. So what you should be doing every year is making sure you check the batteries in your smoke alarm. Daylight saving is a great time. Every time we wind those clocks forward or back, check the batteries, or even better, have a smoke alarm with a 10-year battery. Okay, so you're only having to change it, every 10 years, or even better, which is happening in a lot of newer homes, is interconnected smoke alarms that are into the power of the property. And the great thing about interconnected smoke alarms is if one goes off, they all go off in the home. So it alerts everyone to the threat. So if the fire's downstairs, all the smoke alarms would go off in the property, and in all those common spaces, where, at night where people might be, especially in bedrooms, recommend you have a smoke alarm. Some other really common things where fires occur, the kitchen. Okay, so the kitchen is where a lot of fires start in the home. And the key premise here is never leave cooking unattended. I know it sounds like a really simple, straightforward thing, but we've all done it. And luckily for us, it doesn't go wrong. But for many people, it does. And one of the common things, they've got something on the stove, they go outside, they forget it, or they go outside, they get locked out, then a fire occurs. If something happens, one of the common fires that happen in the cooking is when you're cooking with oil, you might be frying something. Do not attempt to lift that pan off the stove. Use a fire blanket if you've got it. If you don't, evacuate, let the fire brigade done it. Fire brigade has seen many times where people attempt to lift the item off the stove, they drop it on the floor, spreading the fire, drop it on the table, or worse, tip it on themselves, causing serious injury. Never try and lift a burning item off the stove, get it out the oven. If you can, put it out. If not, evacuate safely. Another one, key, is around heaters, fireplaces. We've had a number of tragic fires where clothes have been put too close to fireplaces or heaters and they catch fire, and then unfortunately, often it's left overnight, and then unfortunately people get seriously injured or killed due to that. Fire safety is really critical, and I'd encourage everyone to access that CFI website, access that home fire checklist, do an assessment of your home, talk with the people that you live with, and make sure that your home is as fire safe as it can possibly be. Now, before we move on, there's some other really key websites and links that you can go to, and I'd encourage everyone to have a look. If you're a little bit more tech savvy, have a look at redcross.org.au/prepare, and there's a number of tools that you can do. They've got their version of an emergency plan. It's a bit bigger than council, so if you want to go in a bit more detail, that one might be for you. They've got an app that you can download that you can put on your phone, and that can help you. So again, if you're a little bit more tech savvy, that might be for you. And then they've got their version of a survival checklist, so I'd encourage you to check that out. It might be more suited to your context. Now, we've talked about, preparing early, all those steps that you can do. And probably the other key thing that you can do to prepare for an emergency is getting connected and staying connected in community. We know connected communities are resilient communities. We know that people who've got, friends, connections in the community recover and bounce back from all kinds of emergencies much, much quicker than the people that don't. So what we would encourage people to do is build connections with your local community, and we'll go through some ways that you can do that. Talk to your neighbours about your emergency plan and their emergency plan, and see if you can assist each other. This is especially good, during summer, hot days. You might have an elderly neighbour. You can check on that person. In a storm, you can check on that person, see if they're okay. So knowing, or you could, if you've got a neighbour that you can trust, asking them to assist you or check on you in an emergency, or during a critical period, that can make the difference between you getting through that okay and not. If you're new to a community and you're looking to get involved and build those connections, local volunteering opportunities are a great way to get involved, or getting involved in community groups, sporting clubs, all those kind of things, are really important. We'll go through some examples of how you can do that. And we talked about, an agreed meeting place before. But in terms of, building connections, and, there are lots of ways that you can build connections, and volunteering is a really great one. And on the Cardinia Shire website, there's a link there, or you can search volunteering on our website. You can go on there and actually search for different roles or different groups in the community that are looking for volunteers. And there's, some ones that, prominent in all communities. CFA is a great way to get involved. One, to build connections, but also to give back, and not every role has to be on the fire truck. They've got many, many roles that you can do to get involved, be it community engagement, fundraising, maintenance. There's something for everyone. And same with the State Emergency Service. They've got a role for everyone. It's not just helping out at a storm or a flood. It's community safety, it's community development, it's maintenance, it's fundraising, all those kind of things. And they're great ways to get to know, a wide variety and diverse range of people, both young, old, those organisations reflect the diversity in our community. Some other groups that you might want to get involved with, your local neighbourhood house. They're a great way to connect in via both learning opportunities. You get to do some really fun kinds of courses and things that they offer, but also just getting to know each other. Lots of them offer just sort of catch-up sessions where you can get to meet others in your community, like-minded people. So I'd encourage everyone to look up their local neighbourhood house in their area and to build those connections. Other groups that focus on other particular interests. So an example is Neighbourhood Watch. If you're interested in that and getting to know your community and building on safety, that's a great way to get connected. And there are many, many other ways that you can get connected in your community. So I'd encourage you to go on that link, look them up, or search local groups in your area and get connected, because being connected is one of the best ways to prepare yourself for an emergency. Now, those are just the basic tips that I wanted to go through tonight with you, and I wanted to leave some time for questions. But so what we'll do is I'll stop the presentation and we'll open up to questions. I haven't seen if there are any questions in the chat, but what we might do is turn on people's cameras and see if there are questions. If there isn't, but we'll give a moment for Alicia to do that, and we might throw to some questions if people have them. So I think, David, you've got a question. I think we just got to enable your camera, and we'll do that. Yep, David, I think you're ready to go. If you want to unmute yourself and turn on your camera, and you can ask your question.
Thanks, Stuart, and thanks for the presentation. Some really valuable information in there, I thought, especially around the type of things that you need to remember to take in an emergency. And writing down information just seems something that we've forgotten to do today, and forgetting a telephone or losing a telephone in an emergency means you lose all your contacts. It's a really good tip. And speaking about technology, Stuart, when we had the fires in the Bunyip State Forest, one of the things that I found as part of Neighbourhood Watch is the lack of understanding that the public had around the use of the emergency app that gives you incredibly good, accurate information. And a lot of people just didn't even know about it. Now, I know that's a couple of years ago now, but is there a way for council to be able to help some of those more vulnerable members of the communities in those fire-prone areas and even in the flood-prone areas to be able to gain access to that type of information through phone numbers, through websites, and that sort of thing, rather than just through a smartphone?
Now, thank you, David. A great point there. The Vic Emergency app is a great app, and again, we would encourage all people to have that app to alert them to emergencies. And I guess it is that technology. So council always promotes those bits of information. But one way you can, especially during a fire, is called the Vic or all emergencies, call the Vic Emergency hotline, and we promote that. And one thing I'd recommend is people have that as part on their emergency plan. So if they're not as technology savvy in terms of having a smartphone or a computer, people can call that Vic Emergency hotline and get the same information for their area as they would on the app. So that's what I'd recommend for those people who like my parents, my father and my mum do not have a smartphone. My dad can barely text. He's not that old, but yes, I would recommend that people put that number on the fridge or on their emergency plan. But no, thank you, David. Great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Are there any other questions?
There's no silly questions, or if anyone's got they think they've got an idea about anything they've learned tonight, would love to hear it. Anything that any gems that I've poured out. If there's been nothing, that's if you've known everything, that's great. Joe.
This is not a question, Stuart, but more of an observation and a comment back to the team in relation to the evac kits and the importance of actually providing that information to give a little bit of, I suppose, awareness in relation to getting people prepared and knowing how valuable they've been to date, you know, as a result of the Bunyip bushfires and people and that lady getting 10 pairs of shoes. I know that the team has done an enormous amount of work to date, going out to some really vulnerable community members, organisations, working with them, working with special needs groups, and catering around people's individual needs. And they're really, really important. But even, you know, I'm in Berwick, and even I've got one. I'm not in a bushfire area or a flood-prone area, but if something was to happen, like a small earthquake, you know, having some things at the ready can really calm down family members, and as well, you know, the nervous mum or dad who's trying to gather everybody to get away from something. So really, really invaluable, and just a bit of a shout out to the team for the amount of work that you've done in this space.
Now, thanks, Joan. I would encourage everyone to have a kit. You know, even those minor medical emergencies where you've got to go really quickly, you know, where you've got to get those items. It could be, you know, like sort of a semi-overnight bag. You make the bag, you make the emergency kit suit your context. So I would encourage everyone to have that kit. As Joe said, it's not just for the big events, it's for the small events as well, that it can be really critical. And it's a great way at the, you know, at the start of a season, the start of a summer, to look at that kit, repack it, have a conversation with the family. It's a good little conversation starter as you prepare that kit for that season or review it. David.
Oh, I'm back again.
No, feel free. Thank you, David.
Joe just raised an issue there, which sparked a memory for me, and that's the importance of for those people that are comfortable with using technology, getting photographs of all of the documents, or getting scanned documents, even things like Medicare cards and driver's licenses for ID, bank cards and those sorts of things. Photograph them and upload them to a secure cloud, and that way, if you lose your phone, you can access that information still at a public library, for example, or you can borrow your friend's device. And a lot of those little bits and pieces of information can really help the process through an insurance claim, for example. So if you're in a situation where the worst has happened, you've still got access to really important documents and information at your fingertips, and you don't have to worry about putting originals into a safe box or remember to take them with you when you need to flee. So technology can be a real assistance in these sorts of situations.
Great point, David. For those that are a little bit more savvy with the cloud, or, you know, as we talked about, you know, photocopying is the basic USB stick, but then I think the cloud is probably the gold standard in terms of keeping those items somewhere where you can get them. Great suggestion, David. Thank you for that. And I guess opening up, does anyone have a tip that they do, throwing it out to the room, that they want to share, something that they do at home with their family that helps them get them prepared? I'm sure we've got a couple gems out there.
Well, I know for myself, Stuart, I've got 3 young kids, and so probably every 6 months or so, we just talk through what we planned out earlier. So our meeting places, numbers to call, safe words. That was something we've been practicing for many, many years. So we have a code word that we might use if we're trying to get a particular message out, or where do we meet if this happens? Where do we meet if that happens? And we just chat about those in a conversation. It just sort of cements it and refreshes it in everybody's mind. Or sometimes you might need to alter it a bit when your circumstances change.
No, thanks, Lisa. That's great. Again, you know, preparing with younger kids is something that can be a bit harder. But David?
One of the things we saw out of the Bunyip fires was through police and CFA commentary was a lot of people trying to return to a very dangerous location to retrieve pets in particular. And I think it's an important reminder that you need to include your pets in your emergency plan. And not only is that gathering the pets and maybe getting some basic stuff for them if they're on medication, but also knowing where you're going to take them to. And there's a lot of kenneling facilities and And the ability to be able to put those cats or dogs or horses, whatever they may be, into a facility that's suitable very quickly. So knowing those locations locally or even just a little bit farther abroad can really change the state of your mind, your family's mind, especially if you've got young kids. But also importantly, it helps make the area that you're fleeing safer for emergency services, because you're not trying to get back in, and it means that emergency services don't need to allocate resources to try to prevent people from entering a dangerous zone. I know we've seen time and time again where people do re-enter areas and their vehicle will get hit by a tree, or they'll go over a bridge which has been damaged, which they can't see, and their vehicle will go off the road. So it's one of those things that I think people tend to forget with an emergency plan, but has serious repercussions when the event is actually occurring.
Yeah, great point. As we touched on, I would recommend that everyone, as part of their emergency plan, include that detailed thinking about their parents, and not their parents, their pets. And during the Bunyip bushfire, as an example, the council will open up emergency relief centres, but often those places aren't very suitable for animals, and council will try and obviously find a place to put them. Usually it's a kettling facility or something like that. But as David was saying, think about that plan, the items that you will need. One example that I've seen with my own eyes was a lady who had 5 cats, and she was trying to evacuate her home due to an emergency, and she had all her leads and all her cats on one lead, walking them, away from the emergency. So it could be about, do you have a carry baskets for those pets that you can take in an emergency, all those kind of things, because those are things that are going to make the difference at the time. If you're trying to put 5 cats on a lead and get them in the car, we've all heard the phrase, it's like trying to herd cats. Those are the things that will save you the time, that pre-planning. Think about those things. So again, thank you, David, for reiterating that. And people with horses, again, those they require a serious plan, and many people across our shire do. So please make sure that you do include your pets in that emergency plan and in your planning, because it will save you a lot of grief at the time. Now, I'm conscious, I know we've got a number of people on the line. I'm sure everyone's got at least one gem that they might do. I'm gonna not pick on people, but invite them. Jennifer, do you have something that you do at home that you would recommend in terms of emergency planning? So I think Alicia is just going to unmute you there. Yep. Right. And I know, Jen, I know you said your camera wasn't working, but feel free to just chat.
Sorry. So I've just moved back into the area after 45 years or something, specifically to live with my 90-year-old parents to support them. They live on a small rural property in the Shire. But I also have a daughter, son-in-law and granddaughter who live in Warragul. So it seems to me that I need to do 3 of these plans and grab-and-go kits, etc., for all of those members of our family, just so if something happens somewhere, that we're all on top of it.
Yeah, I would recommend that, for all those different contexts, you have that plan, and especially around, parents that you're looking after or people you care for, having those things ready, is really critical. And if you, I know Alicia popped in the chat, Jennifer, please reach out to Alicia and we'll send you a couple bags to help get you started on that journey. But I think, get them ready, get your family involved.
Yes, thank you. I will certainly be following up all the resources that you've mentioned tonight. I found it very helpful.
Thanks, Jen. I'm gonna throw to Alex. I think who is a friend of one of my colleagues. But Alex, do you have anything that that you do around the home that you would like to share, or something you've picked up from tonight?
Oh, no pressure, right?
No pressure.
No, I think you've covered pretty much everything. I've got, but then I go camping a fair bit as well. A fold-up solar panel, which is good because it charges both my torch and my mobile phone. So it's handy for both camping, but also for an emergency kit. And every now and then they go on sale on Amazon for around $80 for a sort of a 20-watt panel. So they're and they fold up pretty small, but I guess not everybody would probably go to that length, but they are really, really handy.
No, great tip. I think again, it's about your context and and that kind of thing, and that's a great way to get prepared and charge those items. No, thank you for sharing, Alex.
Right.
I might throw to I think Marie. If you Maria, did you want to share anything that you might have learned tonight, or a tip that you might have that you want to share?
Hi, we've just actually shifted down here, so I'm just listening to all the information. It's been amazing, and I'm just really learning as we go. Thank you so very much.
No, thank you. I'm glad it's been useful, and as I said, I love that solar panel idea, Alex. I thought that was a really great one.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Yes, and as I said, we've shifted from actually Queensland, and what we will do, we have a daughter. We shifted down to be close to our daughter, but she lives in Glen Iris, so I'm going to take all my information to her and leave a lot of it there, all the copies, so I know that it'll be safe with her.
That I think that's a great idea. Giving it to family members again, so it's there. It's safe. It's out there. And thank you for sharing that idea.
Oh, thank you. It's been amazing tonight. I've really learned a lot. Thank you so very, very much.
That's all right. Thank you for joining us. Callum, is there something of wisdom that you would like to share with us? A tip that you've got?
Yeah, I don't know how wise it is, but yeah, thanks, Stu. It's been really good. What I'd suggest is that those wind-up torches, radio, battery charger things that you can get. So I've seen them at JCar Electronics. Sort of about $30, and they're sort of independent of any battery cells. So the good thing is that you can just wind them up, and you can have a torch. You can also have a radio, and some of the models actually allow you to charge your phone from them. So they're really quite a nifty device, and a really, really handy thing to have in your pack.
Nah, great suggestion, Callum. Yep, definitely those wind-up torches, wind-up stuff, all those things that are going to support you when the power goes out. I think the storm that we all recently went through here in the Shire and in other areas of Melbourne has really shown power is not guaranteed. So no, thank you. Thanks for sharing, Cal. Courtney and Reese, what would you like to share? I think Alicia's just got to unmute you. There we go.
Yeah, it should be good to go.
Yeah, in our household, we always keep a stock of candles and importantly matches. They come in very handy when the power goes out, and also just keeping a reserve of different size batteries. So again, if you have a torch and the batteries are flat, it's not always as useful. So having those candles and batteries have always been really useful.
Thanks, Reese. A good tip. The device is useless without the batteries, and as Callum said, you get the wind-up ones, which help solder. But if you don't have that, batteries are really great. But just with the candles, make sure you're fire safe with those candles as well in that emergency, which I'm sure you are. And Cal's just posted in the chat there the LED. Thanks, Cal. That's really great. David, I saw David Young. Would there be anything that you would like to share that you do at home, or something you've picked up tonight that's been really useful?
I think the thing I've picked up is being aware of your surroundings. I'm in a rural area, of previous flood and fire behaviour, because particularly floods don't change that much. They might increase in size and intensity, but I know about 10 years ago with those major floods we had, there were people who were evacuating that weren't actually in any danger at all. If they'd known what previous floods had been, where they were quite safe. They were actually in more danger trying to evacuate. As long as they've got enough supplies to last them for the 2 or 3 days that the roads might be impassable, they would have been better staying in place. I know personally where I am, our house is quite reasonably high, but the roads might be impassable for 3 or 4 days. But as long as we've got enough supplies, that's not an issue. But like I say, it would be dangerous to try and leave. And the same with fire. Fire behaviour, especially the major fire events we've had, the behaviour is repeatable time after time. So knowing your surroundings, knowing what fire behaviour generally looks like in your area, and knowing where you've got a safe refuge if that's what you have to find, or knowing how to stay in place until the fire's actually passed and then leaving. Don't leave while the fire's approaching you and putting yourself in danger. So that's, I think, people more knowledge could be gained knowing but the behaviour of these events, because they don't change that much from time to time. The intensity might change, but not the actual event. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I think it's a good tip to know. I think the motto is know your risk and know what you got to prepare for there. And I would encourage everyone to know their risk of their area and then talk to the relevant agency, especially for those residents who have just moved to the area. Talk to CFA, talk to SES, talk to the agencies for that risk, and understand your risk and plan accordingly. I might hold up our conversation now. I think it's been really great. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the presentation, but I've really enjoyed the conversation that's followed as well, and everyone, sharing their tips and tricks that they do at home. Just a big thank you to Alicia for assisting this evening with tonight's session. And I would encourage everyone, we've got 6 other sessions that'll be occurring across the month. Next Wednesday is our next session, and I encourage you to go on the council's website and look at it. That will be on a community safety topic. And then next Thursday, our next EM topic will be with the Country Fire Authority, and they'll be presenting specifically around bushfire preparedness. So if you've enjoyed tonight's session, I do encourage you to come along and see those presentations next week. But no, thank you for your time this evening. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been a useful 55 minutes of your time. And I do encourage you to go on Council's website and look at all those resources and get in touch with Alicia, and she'll send you out a kit bag to start your emergency kit. Thank you, everyone, and good night.